Mummy, Chinonso took my toy. 8-year-old Adana's voice pierced through the music. Did not. Chinonso, the eldest at 10, appeared in the doorway with her hands on her hips, already developing the attitude that came with double digits. Chioma sighed, wiping her hands on her wrapper. Both of you, come and peel these onions for me. That will settle your argument. The girls groaned in unison but obeyed, while 4-year-old Obina played with his toy cars on the cool tiled floor, making engine noises with his mouth. This was her life. This was her kingdom. She'd met Emeka 12 years ago at the University of Lagos during her final year studying business administration. He was already out of school, working with his uncle's construction firm, ambitious and charming with his easy smile and grand promises. He'd courted her properly, asked her father's permission, paid her bride price in their hometown in Anambra State, had a society wedding that made the pages of Ovation magazine. She'd been 23 and naive enough to believe fairy tales came true. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emeka. Landing soon. Traffic from airport might be bad. Don't wait up if I'm late. Chioma smiled and replied with a heart emoji, then returned to her soup. By 7 p.m., dinner was ready. By 9 p.m., she'd put the children to bed. By 11 p.m., she was beginning to worry. She called his phone. It rang once, then went to voicemail. Odd. Emeka always answered her calls. She tried again. Same thing. A knot formed in her stomach. Not quite fear, but something else. Something that whispered warnings she didn't want to hear. At midnight, she heard the gate creak open. The security light illuminated Emeka's BMW pulling into the compound. Chioma stood from the couch where she'd been watching a Nollywood movie she wasn't really seeing. But Emeka didn't come inside. The engine kept running. Curious, Chioma walked to the window and peeked through the curtains. Her husband was on the phone in the car, illuminated by the dashboard lights. He was smiling, laughing even. His hand ran through his hair, the gesture he made when he was flirting. She knew because that's how he'd been with her once. After 10 minutes, he finally ended the call and came inside, his face immediately shifting to tired neutrality. Baby me, he greeted, loosening his tie. Sorry I'm late. The traffic from the airport was murder. Chioma studied his face. You were sitting in the car for 10 minutes. Was I? He looked surprised. Just finishing up some business calls. You know how it is. She did know. She knew exactly how it was. Your food is on the table, she said quietly, heading toward the bedroom. You're not going to eat with me? He sounded genuinely disappointed. I already ate, she lied. I'm tired. That night, as Emeka snored beside her, Chioma stared at the ceiling fan, turning slowly above their bed. The knot in her stomach had grown into something bigger, heavier, something that felt like dread. Sunday morning meant church. The whole family dressed in matching Ankara print, a picture of domestic bliss. Emeka drove them to Daystar Christian Center in his Range Rover, gospel music playing, the children excited about children's church. Brother Emeka, Sister Chioma. Pastor's wife, Mrs. Adebayo, greeted them warmly at the entrance. Your family is truly blessed. Look at these beautiful children. Chioma smiled the smile she'd perfected over years of being a Lagos wife. Gracious, humble, grateful. During the service, Emeka's phone vibrated repeatedly. He kept checking it discreetly, typing quick responses. When Chioma glanced over, he angled the screen away. After service, during the meet and greet in the church courtyard, Chioma's cousin Ngozi approached with her usual exuberance. Cousin me. Ngozi hugged her tight, her expensive perfume overwhelming. You're glowing, oh. Marriage is treating you well. Ngozi was younger by 5 years, unmarried, and worked as a marketer for a telecommunications company. She visited often. Too often, Chioma was beginning to realize. Always when Emeka was home. Always dressed a little too provocatively for someone visiting family. "How was your trip to Abuja, Brother Emeka?" Ngozi asked, touching his arm in a way that lasted a second too long. "Productive," Emeka replied, but his eyes lingered on Ngozi in a way that made Chioma's chest tighten. "You should bring me along next time," Ngozi laughed. "I know some good restaurants in Maitama." "Maybe," Emeka said noncommittally, but he was smiling. On the drive home, Chioma was quiet. Too quiet. "What's wrong?" Emeka finally asked. "Nothing." "Chioma, I know you. What is it?" She wanted to ask about the phone calls, the texts, the way he looked at Ngozi. But what would she say? That she had a feeling? Lagos wives didn't confront their husbands over feelings. They stayed graceful. They prayed, they waited. "I'm just tired," she said instead. That week, the feeling grew stronger. Emeka started coming home later. His business trips became more frequent. He stopped reaching for her at night. On Thursday, Chioma went through his phone while he was in the shower. Her hands shook as she scrolled through his messages, but he deleted everything. The call logs were clean. Too clean. He was covering his tracks. Friday evening, her friend Adeyes came over for small chops and gossip. Adeyes had been married for 15 years and knew all the signs. "Girl, you look stressed," Adeyes observed, biting into a puff-puff. "What's going on?" Chioma hesitated, then poured out her suspicions in hushed tones while the children played upstairs. Adeyes' expression grew serious. "Have you checked his other phone?" "Other phone?" "Chioma, you're a big man's wife and you don't know these things? They all have other phones. Secret phones for their secret lives." That night, while Emeka slept, Chioma searched his briefcase, his car, his gym bag. Nothing. But Saturday morning, while taking his suit to the dry cleaners, she found it. A small Nokia phone tucked in the inner pocket. The kind nobody used anymore unless they wanted something untraceable. Her hands trembled as she pressed the power button. It was locked with a password. She tried their anniversary date. Wrong. She tried his birthday. Wrong. She tried the children's birthdays. Wrong. On impulse, she tried Ngozi's birthday, a date she only knew because they'd just celebrated it last month. The phone unlocked. Chioma's world tilted. The messages were explicit, detailed. Months of conversations between Emeka and Ngozi, her own blood, her own cousin, talking about love, about hotels, about the life they would have when the time was right. Chioma sat on the bathroom floor, the phone clutched in her hand, bile rising in her throat. She read message after message, each one a knife twisting deeper. "I love what you did to me last night," Ngozi had written just 2 days ago. "You make me feel alive," Emeka had replied. "She doesn't understand me like you do." She. That's what Chioma had become to her own husband. Just she. The bathroom door rattled. "Chioma? You've been in there for 30 minutes. Are you okay?" She shoved the phone into her bra and flushed the toilet for effect. "I'm fine. Just stomach upset." When she emerged, Emeka was already dressed for his Saturday rounds, checking on construction sites, meeting with contractors. "I'll be back by evening," he said, kissing her forehead like nothing was wrong. Like he hadn't just destroyed everything. "Okay," Chioma heard herself say. Her voice sounded normal, calm. After he left, she went through the phone properly. Found photos, videos, things she could never unsee. But it was one particular message that made her decision. "Ngozi, when will you leave her? I'm tired of hiding." Emeka. Soon, I promise. I just need to figure out the timing. Chioma deleted nothing. She took photos of everything with her own phone, then put the Nokia back exactly where she'd found it. Then she sat in her living room, her beautiful, expensive living room with its imported furniture and marble floors, and felt something inside her die. Or maybe it wasn't death. Maybe it was birth. The birth of someone new, someone harder, someone capable of things the old Chioma would never have dreamed of. That evening, she made a decision. She would catch them. She needed to see it with her own eyes, needed the image burned into her brain so she would never forget, never forgive, never weaken. She spent the next week tracking Emeka's patterns through the Nokia phone. He'd stopped being careful, assuming she was the obedient, trusting wife she'd always been. The following Saturday, Emeka announced another business trip to Port Harcourt. "I'll be back Sunday evening," he said, packing his small suitcase. "Safe travels," Chioma replied, kissing him goodbye. But she knew the truth. The Nokia phone had told her everything. He wasn't going to Port Harcourt. He'd booked a hotel room at the Wheat Baker in Ikoyi for him and Ngozi. Chioma waited 2 hours after he left, then told the children's nanny, Auntie Blessing, that she needed to run urgent errands. She drove to Ikoyi, parked where she could see the hotel entrance, and waited. At 4 p.m., Emeka's BMW pulled up. He stepped out, looking around nervously before entering. 30 minutes later, Ngozi arrived in a taxi, wearing a tight red dress that left nothing to imagination. Chioma's hands gripped the steering wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. She gave them an hour. Let them settle in. Let them get comfortable. Then she called the hotel, claiming to be Mrs. Okafor, trying to reach her husband in room 304, information the Nokia phone had provided. "One moment, Ma," the receptionist said, and connected the call. It rang. And rang. No answer. Chioma hung up and drove home. She didn't need to see any more. Her imagination was torture enough. But 2 days later, the Nokia phone revealed something that changed everything. They were planning to come to her house. On a Wednesday afternoon when Emeka thought she had a mother's fellowship meeting, they were going to be together in her own bed, and that's when Chioma decided she wouldn't just watch anymore. She would be there. Wednesday arrived with blue skies and the false promise of a normal day. Chioma, dressed for her mother's fellowship meeting in church, complete with her Bible and notebook, kissed the children goodbye and drove away in her Mercedes. But she didn't go to church. Instead, she parked 3 streets away, waited 30 minutes, then walked back to her own house. She'd given the nanny the day off, claiming she'd be home early. The security guard, Musa, was used to her coming and going. "Madam, you don't come back?" he asked, surprised. "I forgot something," she replied casually. "Don't worry, I'll just be a few minutes." She let herself in through the front door, then crept upstairs to her bedroom. Her heart pounded so loud she was sure they'd hear it. She heard them before she saw them. Ngozi's laugh, Emeka's low voice responding. They were in the living room, drinks in hand, relaxed. "Are you sure she won't come back?" Ngozi asked. "She'll be at church for hours. You know how those women's meetings go. They pray, they gossip, they eat jollof rice. We have time." Chioma's stomach churned. She positioned herself in the guest room that overlooked the master bedroom window, waited behind the curtain where she could see everything. 20 minutes later, they moved to the bedroom, and Chioma watched. She watched her husband undress her cousin, watched them on her marriage bed, on the sheets she'd changed that morning. Watched them laugh and touch and move together like they'd done this 100 times before. She watched until she couldn't breathe, until the room spun, until something inside her shattered so completely she knew it could never be put back together. Then she crept back downstairs, left the house as quietly as she'd entered, and drove. She didn't know where she was going. She just drove. Past Lekki Toll Gate, past Aja, past everything familiar, until she found herself at the beach. Chioma sat on the sand in her church dress and cried. She cried for the girl who'd believed in love, for the wife who'd tried so hard to be perfect, for the future that had just died in her bedroom. When there were no more tears, she called a daise. "I saw them," she said simply. "Chai, where are you?" "The beach." "Stay there, I'm coming." A daise found her an hour later, sat beside her in the sand, and held her hand while the Lagos waves crashed against the shore. "What are you gonna do?" Adais finally asked. Chioma stared at the ocean. "I don't know yet, but I know I can't let this go. I can't just forgive and forget like they tell us to do in church. This requires something more." "Revenge?" The word hung between them like a prayer and a curse. "Maybe," Chioma whispered. "Or maybe just justice." By the time she drove home, Emeka's car was gone. The bedroom had been tidied. Sheets changed, windows open to air out Ngozi's cheap perfume. Like nothing had happened. But everything had happened. That night when Emeka came home whistling and cheerful, Chioma served him dinner with a smile. "How was your day?" she asked sweetly. "Productive." He lied easily. "Very productive." "Good," she said, watching him eat the food she'd prepared. "I'm glad you're getting so much done." And in that moment, Chioma Okafor became someone new. Someone who could smile while planning. Someone who could serve pepper soup while plotting revenge. Someone dangerous. Chioma didn't sleep that night. While Emeka snored contentedly beside her, the same man who'd been inside her cousin just hours before, she lay awake, her mind working through possibilities. Divorce was the obvious answer, but divorce meant losing half of everything they'd built. It meant her children growing up in a broken home. It meant becoming another divorced Lagos woman, pitied at church events, gossiped about in WhatsApp groups. No, divorce was too simple, too clean. Emeka had humiliated her in the worst way possible, with family, in her own home, in her own bed. The betrayal was layered, calculated, cruel, so her response needed to be equally calculated. At 3 a.m., Chioma slipped out of bed and went to the guest room. She opened her laptop and began researching. Revenge. Betrayal. How to hurt someone who'd hurt you. The stories she found were dark. Women who'd poisoned their husbands, destroyed their businesses, exposed them publicly. But none of it felt right. Chioma wasn't violent. She wasn't murderous, but she was smart. She thought about what would hurt Emeka most. His reputation, his business, his family name. Then it hit her. The one thing that mattered to Emeka more than anything else. Legacy. He talked constantly about building something for his children, about the Okafor name continuing through generations. His children. The thought formed slowly, terribly in her mind. What if those children weren't his? She pushed the laptop away, disgusted with herself. She couldn't do that. Could she? But the idea had taken root. And over the next days and weeks, it grew. There was a man. From university, Uche Okonkwo. He'd loved her once, pursued her relentlessly until she'd chosen Emeka instead. He'd even shown up at her wedding, watched from the back row with heartbreak in his eyes. Last she'd heard, he was still single, working as an architect in Abuja. Chioma found him on Facebook. His profile was private, but his cover photo showed him at a building site. Successful, handsome, alone. She sent a friend request. He accepted within minutes. Then a message. Hi, Uche. It's been a long time. How are you? His response came fast. Chioma? Wow, I never thought I'd hear from you again. I'm well. You? They chatted casually at first, catching up, talking about old times, avoiding anything too personal. But Uchi's interest was clear in every message, every emoji, every I've missed you. Over the next 2 weeks, their conversations deepened. Chioma was careful, never mentioning Emeka's betrayal, never revealing her pain. She was just an old friend reconnecting. Then one night, during one of Emeka's business trips, she video called Uche. Seeing his face after all these years stirred something in her. Not quite love, but memory. Memory of being young and wanted and chosen. You look beautiful, Uche said softly. Lagos life is treating you well. Sometimes, she replied carefully. How's married life? There it was, the question she'd been avoiding. It's complicated. Uche's expression shifted. Hope flickered across his face. Complicated how? I don't want to talk about it, she said. Tell me about you. Why didn't you ever marry? He laughed bitterly. I did, actually. For 3 years. It didn't work out. What happened? I married her, but I never stopped thinking about you. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Uchi. I know. You're married. You have children. I shouldn't have said that. He ran his hand through his hair. But it's true. It's always been true. Chioma's heart raced. This was it. The opening she needed. The weapon she could use against Emeka. But using it meant crossing a line. Meant becoming exactly what she despised. I have to go, she said quickly. We'll talk soon. She ended the call and sat in the darkness of her bedroom, trembling. Could she really do this? Could she sleep with another man, potentially get pregnant, and pass those children off as Emeka's? It was monstrous. Unthinkable. And yet, Emeka had done worse. He'd betrayed their vows, their family, their life. He'd brought another woman into their sacred space and felt no remorse.